Are you somebody who loves horror? Or have you watched Obsession in theaters? Have you watched Backrooms? Are you somebody who's looking to dive into books of the same genre? Well, this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to break down some of the best horror book recommendations I have. We're going to go through stuff like the king of horror, Stephen King himself, to some lesser known titles. I cover a little bit of everything in this video. So if you're looking to get into the reading world, if you're looking to get into horror fiction, this is the video for you. Let's jump right into it. You need to read World War Z by Max Brooks. This is a book that tells kind of like a documentarian style version of the zombie apocalypse. It is a unique book in that it's written in this very sort of oral history style that is different from most of the regular literary fiction that we'll talk about here. So everything is kind of this interview format, which gives a unique perspective to you seeing all over the world, all these different people, interviews with people who are in Russia, who are in Africa, who are seeing like the first kernels of this zombie outbreak take hold versus later on when the outbreak has fully amassed itself and now people are like firing off war battles between human beings and zombies. It sounds kind of silly, and it is kind of silly at times. This is written by Max Brooks, the son of comedy legend Mel Brooks. It is a phenomenal book. It is a quick read, even though it is kind of longer in terms of length, but it is a breezy read as well. So you can just breeze past it if you are somebody who is, looking to get into this kind of stuff. Even if you're not necessarily a huge reader, I've seen a lot of positive reactions to this book because of that interview oral history style format. It just reads very quickly. So that's something worth considering if you're thinking about reading World War Z. Another thing I want to mention here is that the audiobook is excellent of World War Z. I've listened to the book and read the book. The audiobook feels like an audio documentary in a lot of ways, and it's probably one of the better produced audiobooks in terms of fiction that I've ever listened to. I don't really love audiobooks for fiction, so it means a lot to hear this coming from me because it's just not really something that I enjoy generally. And World War Z does as good of a job as anything in terms of translating the text to an audio format. Overall, World War Z is a quick, propulsive read, and it is well worth checking out if you're looking to dip your toe into the horror genre. It's not that scary, but it is quick moving and feels like an action movie at times. And if you're somebody who's scared easily, don't be deterred by just the concept of a zombie outbreak. This book is very breezy, and even though it is brutal at times, it is well worth checking out. Next up, you need to read The Shining by Stephen King. This is the first Stephen King book on this list, but it is the first of a couple because this guy is the horror icon. He is the man who essentially raised the genre from this sort of pulpy back of the bookshop stuff to front of the bookshop, bestseller, icon of the genre, and with good reason. The Shining may be his most famous work. It's hard for me to really say this. I know there's a lot of consternation about what is his most iconic work, but this is the one that was turned into a movie by Stanley Kubrick. The book differs from the movie significantly. So many people have seen the movie, even if you haven't. Just know this is a very creepy book about a school teacher, a disgraced school teacher who shacks up in this abandoned, haunted hotel with his family for the winter and slowly begins losing his mind because the hotel itself is kind of, evil and nefarious and haunted. Everyone knows that the book and movie kind of differ in a lot of ways. Actually, there was an interview with Steven Spielberg. He was on the Rewatchables podcast recently, and he was talking about how when he spoke to Stanley Kubrick, who was a friend of his, after this movie came out, Kubrick was asking him what he thought, and Spielberg said, I kind of liked it, but Kubrick kind of got out of him that he had some questions. He kind of didn't love the fact that some of the more creepy, freaky elements of the book didn't make it into Kubrick's movie. So check out the book, because the book has so many added layers here. I love getting inside Danny's head, the young boy whose father is losing his mind, and getting more of an understanding of The Shining, the power that allows Danny to communicate with the dead and these other nefarious forces. Also, Danny's relationship with the caretaker who takes care of the Overlook Hotel before Danny gets there. Their relationship is really integral to the book and is kind of done dirty by the movie, and I love that element of it. It has a sequel book, Dr. Sleep, also by Stephen King, that came out a few years ago, that I also thought was very fun and excellent. Also made a very good movie by horror icon Mike Flanagan. So if you're somebody who loves the genre, you need to read The Shining, because it is a seminal text in the genre. It has affected not just books, not just horror fiction, but also the movies that we see every year. It has that sort of lasting effect because the creepiness here, the world weariness, the cynicism, just the general eeriness of the Overlook Hotel is something that will last in all manner of fiction, books, movies, television, for decades upon decades upon decades, and already has. Next up, you need to read I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I Am Legend is a post-apocalyptic book about a virus that turns all of the world into these vampire-like zombies. It has nothing to do, ostensibly, with the Will Smith movie, other than, like, the monsters are kind of sort of similar. But other than that, it's basically completely different. You're all in the head of the main character, who Will Smith's ostensible character from the movie. But again, this is another one that differs significantly from the movie itself. So there is a lot to glean here if you're looking to really just kind of figure stuff out. If you're looking to learn more about the story, if you're interested in the concept, there's a lot more to take in with the book. It's the first real short read I think I have on this list. It moves really, really quickly, but the book itself just isn't super long. It's almost like a novella type story. So if you're looking to read another iconic text in the world of horror and don't want to dive into one of these longer works of fiction, I Am Legend may be a work for you. Also, they're working on a sequel to the Will Smith movie that apparently is going to incorporate some elements of the book. One unique thing about the Will Smith movie, the I Am Legend line makes no sense whatsoever. If you read the book, you'll actually understand what the meaning of the title I Am Legend is, because it is sort of the core tenet, the core element of this entire story, is how the main guy goes from understanding that he is the last bastion of humanhood to becoming this sort of monster in his own right to the remaining monsters who've taken over the planet. Very unique perspective, very kind of heady book, and still a very fun horror read. It's not super terrifying, but it is a very fun horror book that plays on a lot of the genre tropes that we love. Next up, you need to read Fevre Dream by George R.R. Martin. Yes, that George R.R. Martin, the get off your butt and finish the Game of Thrones books, George R.R. Martin. Before he was writing about Westeros and Winterfell and all the dragons, he wrote this book, which is a horror epic about vampires on the Mississippi and tugboats and a crazy tugboat captain. And it is a fun, awesome book. This is one of my favorite sort of surprise reads that I've had. This book is genuinely creepy and the world is so rich. You've never seen vampires like this, and I mean that in a positive way. The characters here feel so real, they're funny, they're really lived in. It feels like a George R.R. Martin book, like the best parts of Game of Thrones, but now in a vampire tugboat world. It sounds silly, it is silly, but also it's fun. It's a little long, you know, very self-indulgent in typical George R.R. Martin fashion, but the good news is it's finished, so there's no more to wait upon, because, you know, those Game of Thrones books ain't getting written. So enjoy Fevre Dream by George R.R. Martin. If you like vampires, if you like any sort of gothic kind of horror, American horror, I really love this book and I highly recommend it. Next up, The Haunting of Hill House by Mary Shelley. This is a short one. It was a classic and with good reason. It was adapted into a television show, a great television show by Mike Flanagan and Netflix a number of years ago. But Mary Shelley's book is about a psychic who brings 4 people with this paranormal experience, who've had paranormal experiences, to spend some time in what's known as like a haunted house in the area. And, you know, predictably, hijinks ensue. It's a great haunted house story, a great haunted house book. Clearly influenced a lot of horror haunted house movies. There's something wrong with the house movies that came after it. But this is kind of like at the forefront of the genre, a classic. If you are somebody who loves those movies, if you're somebody who enjoys horror movies in general, you kind of need to check this one out because it does inform so much of what comes after it. And it still reads very well, even though it is an older book. And it is a shorter book, like a novella type book. So again, worth checking out if you are somebody who's into being a horror completist. Check out The Haunting of Hill House by Mary Shelley. Next up, The Troop by Nick Cutter. This is a book about a Boy Scout troop that gets stranded, and, you know, some evil happens. One of them is, you know, going a little crazy. There's a killer, nefarious force. You can see the line here. You see what's going to happen. It's on a horror list. Those boys are going to be traumatized. That's just inevitable. But it's a great book. It's a great fun, dare I say fun read. I shouldn't say that because these kids are all messed up afterwards, but it's a good book and I think you should check it out for sure. Again, one that it's like a more modern book, so it reads and is very propulsive in a modern way. So that's something in its favor for sure. I thoroughly enjoy Nick Cutter's writing. I think that it feels like a story that kind of could happen. It's like Yellow Jackets before Yellow Jackets. It's a gonzo version of Yellow Jackets in a way that I, again, mean as a compliment. If you loved Lord of the Flies, you know, read this book. This is Lord of the Flies meets a horror movie. And those two things together are good. I mean, not that Lord of the Flies is some uplifting tale of the human spirit, but comparatively, it's actually, you know, a nice story because these kids are traumatized again. But well worth checking out. The Troop by Nick Cutter. Definitely have to read this book if you're into horror, if you're looking for your next scary horror read. Next up, you need to read Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Okay, so I'm gonna have 2 Stephen King books as my last 2 books on this list. This is the second to top one, I guess, my number 2. And the reason I have this ranked so high is that this really speaks to me as a young parent. This book is about a family that moves into a new house and they discover that there's this sort of ancient, weird burial ground behind their house in which animals are coming back from the dead. And spoiler alert, something happens where a member of this young family is killed. The family tries to utilize this cemetery situation to bring them back. Horrifying, terrible things ensue. Potentially, some people think, Stephen King's best book. I don't know that I agree with that, but I do think that it plays extremely well, even now. I think it's a great, great book. And it's just as well written as you'll find anything in this genre. I think the world building is amazing. I think that the characters here are very relatable. And I think that it certainly has a strong case for Stephen King's best book. I wouldn't raise it to that level because I think it lacks some of the lore of what my number 1 is going to be. This book is haunting, horrifying, freaky, creepy. Every adjective you could use for a horror book, it hits all those boxes, checks those boxes, but also the characters feel real and lived in. It is as comparable to a horror movie as you're going to get in terms of literary fiction. So definitely worth checking out this book. If you are somebody who loves horror, if you're somebody who's into Stephen King or just wanted to try him out, this is a pretty good entry point. So check out Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Next up, my number 1, you need to read It by Stephen King. Okay, so It is Stephen King's magnum opus. It is probably regarded as his best overall work. It is this 1,000-page, massive behemoth of a book, all about Derry, the killer clown, that captures, that just sort of obsesses over, that haunts this town over decades, over the course of time, this monster, and the horrors that ensue as a result of this killer clown. First of all, It, the killer clown, one of the most iconic villains in all of horror fiction, perhaps the most. They've made several movies, they've made a television show now, and because the world of It, the world of Derry, is just so rich with horrifying, scary storytelling potential that you see at play in this book. It is, to me, one of my favorite books I've ever read. There are some elements that have not aged particularly well. Looking at you, crazy ending, crazy insane ending that I'm not going to get into right now. But if you're somebody who's been on the fence about diving into this massive, massive book, I cannot stress to you enough how quick of a read it feels like. It doesn't feel like it's 1,000 pages because you are just breezing past this. There's sections. It's told in this non-linear way where you see the kids as the kids, but also as adults and how they are sort of reacting to the world of it. And they are dealing with the monster both in the past and in the future. And the movies tried to recreate that a little bit in a way that I don't think necessarily worked. But I think that the book itself executes that on such a high level that it's very difficult to reproduce. This book is long, by far the longest on this list, but it is also, to me, the best overall book on this list. So if you are somebody who feels up to it, feels up to reading a 1,000-page book, who feels up to diving into one of the most iconic texts in all of horror fiction, It is definitely for you. Check out Stephen King's It. That does it for us. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more of these book recommendation videos. Until later, I will talk to you guys soon. Bye now.